3 people walked into the woods just before sunset. None of them came back. Their car was found exactly where they had left it. The doors were unlocked. Their phones were still inside. And on the dashboard was a handwritten note. Just 3 words. We heard it. At first, police thought it was a simple case of 3 hikers getting lost. The forest was large. The weather had changed. There were dozens of ways someone could disappear. But then search teams found something that made no sense. A trail of footprints, 3 sets going into the forest, and 1 set coming back. The strange part, the returning footprints belonged to someone who wasn't supposed to be there. Party. Hunt the last afternoon. It happened in the Pacific Northwest, in an isolated forest where the trees were so dense that sunlight barely reached the ground. The 3 friends had planned a simple overnight trip. Nothing extreme. They weren't experienced survivalists. They weren't looking for trouble. They simply wanted to get away from the city for a weekend. There was Daniel, 29, Mason, 31, and their friend Claire, 27. They arrived shortly after 4 in the afternoon. A nearby store owner later remembered seeing them. They bought bottled water, snacks, batteries, and a small camping lantern. The 3 seemed relaxed. They were laughing. Claire even took a photograph outside the store. It would become the last confirmed photograph of all 3 together. According to the store owner, they asked about an old forest road. The owner warned them not to follow it after dark. That road hadn't been maintained for years. But Daniel reportedly smiled and said they wouldn't be staying out late. They drove away at approximately 4:37 p.m. At 5:12, Claire sent a message to her sister. It said, "We found the trail." That was the last normal message anyone received. Part 2, Something in the Trees. Around sunset, the group reached their campsite. They set up their tent near an old logging road. The first few hours appeared completely normal. They cooked dinner, started a small fire, and took photographs. But at approximately 9:40 p.m., something changed. Mason heard a sound coming from deeper in the forest. At first, they assumed it was an animal, a deer, maybe a bear, but then they heard it again, a long, distant whistle. Claire recorded several seconds of audio on her phone. The recording was later recovered by investigators. At the beginning, there is only the sound of wind, then branches moving, and finally, a whistle. 3 short notes, a pause, then 3 more. Daniel reportedly joked that someone was trying to scare them, but Mason didn't laugh. He had noticed something. The sound wasn't coming from one direction. It seemed to move, first from the trees behind them, then from somewhere to their left, and finally, from the forest, directly across from their campsite. The 3 stopped talking. They listened. Nothing. Then Claire whispered, "Did you hear that?" Daniel asked what she meant. She pointed toward the trees. Something had just moved between them. Not an animal, not clearly a person, just a dark shape passing behind the trunks. Mason grabbed the flashlight. He walked several feet toward the trees, and that's when they heard the whistle again, much closer. Part 3, the second voice. Mason returned to the campsite. The group decided to leave. They packed quickly, but before they could reach the car, Claire stopped. She was staring toward the road. Someone was standing there. At least that's what she thought. A figure, motionless, too far away to identify. Daniel raised his flashlight. The beam reached the edge of the road. Nothing was there. They assumed the figure had moved. Then Claire heard something behind them. A voice, her own voice. It said, "Don't leave yet." She froze. Daniel and Mason heard it too. The 3 turned around. Nobody was there. Claire's face changed immediately because the voice had sounded exactly like her. Same tone, same accent, same voice. Mason told them to get in the car. They didn't argue. They drove away. But after less than a mile, Daniel slammed on the brakes. The road ahead was blocked. A fallen tree lay across it. They couldn't continue, so they decided to return to the campsite and wait until morning. That decision would become the last one they ever made together. Part 4, 2:17 am. At 2:17 in the morning, Claire's sister received another message. It contained only one sentence. "Someone is outside." Her sister replied immediately. No response. She called Claire. The phone rang. Once, twice. Then the call connected. But nobody spoke. The sister could hear breathing. Slow breathing. Then a faint tapping sound. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Then Claire whispered, "Don't answer it." Her sister asked what was happening. Claire didn't respond. Instead, another voice came through the phone. A man's voice. calm, almost emotionless. It said, "They're not inside." The call ended. Claire's sister called again. This time the phone was switched off. She contacted emergency services. But because the message didn't contain a location and the group had been camping voluntarily, authorities initially had very little to work with. By morning, the three friends still hadn't returned. Part 5. The empty campsite. At 8:30 a.m., a search team reached the forest. They found the vehicle first. All 3 doors were unlocked. The keys were inside. Claire's backpack was on the back seat. Mason's wallet was in the center console. And Daniel's phone was lying on the dashboard. There was no obvious sign of violence. No blood, no broken windows, no struggle. The campsite was several hundred yards away. The tent was still standing. Inside were sleeping bags, food, water, and the camping lantern. But the fire had gone completely cold. Investigators found 3 sets of footprints leaving the campsite. They followed them for approximately half a mile. Then something strange happened. The footprints stopped, not gradually. They simply ended. There were no tracks beyond that point. Searchers checked the surrounding area. Nothing. Then one officer noticed another set of footprints. They were coming from the opposite direction. One person had walked toward the campsite, and those footprints continued all the way to the tent. Investigators initially assumed they belonged to one of the 3 friends, but the shoe pattern didn't match any of them. Someone else had been there. Part 6. The recording. 3 days into the search, investigators recovered audio from Claire's phone. Most of the recording contained ordinary conversation, but near the end, there was something unusual. Claire was whispering. She said, "I can see someone." Mason asked, "Where?" Claire answered, "Between the trees." Daniel told her not to move. Then the microphone picked up a sound. Footsteps, slow, heavy, approaching the campsite. The 3 friends stopped speaking. The footsteps came closer, then stopped. For almost 20 seconds, nothing happened. Suddenly, a voice whispered, "Claire." She answered instinctively, "Yeah." Mason immediately shouted, "Don't!" But it was too late. The voice spoke again. This time it sounded exactly like Mason. "Claire, come here." The recording ended. Part 7. The old logging camp. A retired forest ranger eventually gave investigators information that changed the search. Decades earlier, there had been a logging camp in that area. The camp had been abandoned after several workers disappeared. Official records listed the incidents as accidents, but locals told a different story. Workers had reportedly complained about strange sounds at night, whistling, footsteps, and voices calling their names from inside the forest. The ranger remembered one particular detail. There was an old emergency shelter, approximately 2 miles beyond the area where the 3 friends disappeared. Search teams hadn't checked it. They went there immediately. The shelter was empty, except for one thing, a small wooden chair, sitting in the middle of the room. On the chair was Claire's jacket. The jacket had been inside her backpack when investigators found the car, or at least they thought it had been Part 8, the final clue. Inside the jacket pocket was a piece of paper. It contained 3 names: Daniel, Mason, Claire. Underneath them was another name, a name nobody recognized, Elliot Vale. Investigators searched old records. They found the name. Elliot Vale had been one of the workers from the abandoned logging camp. He had disappeared in the same forest 34 years earlier, but there was something even stranger. His body had never been found. The official case file contained a final witness statement. A worker claimed he had heard Elliot calling for help from deep inside the forest. He followed the voice, but when he reached the location, Elliot wasn't there. Instead, he heard his own voice calling from behind him. The worker ran. He never returned to the forest. Part 9, the last search. The investigation continued for almost 2 weeks. Helicopters searched the surrounding mountains. Dogs followed the trail. Divers checked nearby water. Nothing. No bodies. No clothing. No evidence of an accident. Eventually, the search was suspended. The 3 friends were officially listed as missing. Their families refused to accept that they had simply wandered away. Years passed. Then, nearly 4 years later, a hunter discovered something near the abandoned logging road. 3 backpacks. They were arranged neatly beside a tree. Inside were personal belongings belonging to Daniel, Mason, and Claire. Everything was dry. Everything was intact, even though the backpacks had supposedly been sitting in the forest for years. But there was one final detail. Inside Claire's backpack was her phone. Investigators were unable to explain how it had survived. The battery was dead. The screen was cracked, but the memory card still worked. There was one final recording. It lasted only 11 seconds. At first, there was silence. Then Claire's voice whispered, "It's not following us." A pause. Then she said, "It's waiting for us to follow it." The recording ended. No one knows what happened to Daniel, Mason, and Claire. There were no bodies, no confirmed sightings, no explanation for the footprints, and no explanation for the voice recordings. The official investigation eventually closed. Their families were left with questions that may never be answered. But people who live near that forest still tell the same warning. Don't follow voices in the trees, especially when the voice sounds like someone you know. Because according to the old ranger who helped investigators, the forest doesn't always call your name first. Sometimes it waits until you call back. And sometimes, when you do, something answers. Something that should not be there. 3 people entered that forest. 3 people disappeared. And to this day, none of them ever returned. Maybe there was a rational explanation. Maybe the friends became lost. Maybe fear caused them to make decisions they couldn't undo. Maybe every strange sound had an ordinary source. But there is one question that remains. If they simply got lost, who left the 4th set of footprints? And why did those footprints lead toward the campsite instead of away from it? Some mysteries are frightening because we don't know the answer. Others are frightening because we may already know it. This is the Hidden Fear Archive, and some stories are better left unexplained.